So here we have Eileen Les Vega. I apologize if I butchered that, but we will be presenting the topic of women in transportation. So thank you so much for coming here today, Eileen. Woo! Thank you. So, just a little bit about her amazing background. So, Eileen has obtained her BS in civil engineering at the University of Puerto Rico and her MS at Mississippi State University. So, she has a lot of experience, and so it varies from Kimley Horn, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Walt Disney World, and she has been involved with a lot of huge scale projects. And so, especially when Hurricane Maria had hit, she really dedicated her knowledge and resources and time to really help Puerto Rico recover from this accident. And so, more recently, with COVID-19 happening in the pandemic, Vega has been providing Puerto Rican airports with services. So, without further ado, please take it away, Miss Eileen. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I was here last year. A different time, I'm just going to share with you all throughout the presentation what can happen in a year. So last year, it was awesome. It was the first time I participated. Dr. Mimi invited me, and it was great. Back then, my life was a little different, and I'm going to share with all of you today where I am today and what am I doing. So thank you, Mary, for inviting me. Let me share my screen. Let's see, there you go. Wait, let's do this first. Let me share first, and then I'll do that. There you go. Here. You're gonna see me twice, but I'm gonna share my screen. You can see my presentation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you're all set.
Okay, hide. There you go. Okay, you can still see me too, right? We're good?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I titled it The Power of Perseverance, Managing the Unexpected. And I think many times we have this plan of what it is that we're going to do in our lives, where are we going to go? And as an engineer, and I know Mary's with me here and a lot of the women here, we have a very organized structural way of thinking. And we plan everything, our lives, like a project. And that's how I see it. I have a plan, I have goals, I have a way to get there. But sometimes things change and we just have to be flexible. And I'm going to talk to you through what my life has been as a student in engineering, as an engineer, and what I'm doing now. I'm also a mother. So life throws at us many things. And I think our attitude and our disposition for success and for perseverance and for doing great things just gives us that impulse or that push to do more. So again, I'm Eileen Velez Vega, and we're going to start with this. I always start with saying that life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% on how we react to it. Many things can happen to us, but we have to be strong. Yes, that's so people always say that, but how we react to things that happen to us is going to determine how successful we are, how happy we are, how we deal with with difficult situations. And that's something that I also have had to go through health-wise as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But we always have to have that perseverance, that determination that no matter what happens, I am going to make it through it. I'm going to make this through. I'm going to go through this and I'm going to make it and I'm going to be okay. We also need a support system. So it's important for us to have those people that cheer us on and that help us. So I've been blessed to have that and to also not give up. You know, there's tough days, but we have to keep going. So I'll show you what I've done and maybe we'll have time for questions and we'll have time to talk. Feel free to chat and ask your questions along the way. I'll stop a few times and Mary or everybody or who is monitoring the chat can tell me what your questions are. Okay, we want to make this interactive. So before we start, I am from Puerto Rico, born and raised. So my first language is Spanish. I went to the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. And this picture, I always share it because it's a Society of Women Engineers in the 1970s in my school at UPRM, University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. It looks very different to what we would see right now in school, 40 years later. But it's interesting. SWE has been at the school for more than 30, 40 years. And back then, there weren't really that many women in engineering or in STEM fields. Today, the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez has about 50% women in their engineering disciplines. It depends by discipline, but it's pretty amazing. We are growing in the engineering, at least in the engineering schools, and hopefully that transfers over to the workplace. But still, if you go outside the University of Puerto Rico, it's not there yet. It's not 50%. Right now, STEM, and I know probably the other speakers talked about it, women in STEM fluctuate between 25%, 24%, around 20-something percent. But with Latinas, we are 3% of the STEM workforce. So many times when I attended or went to conferences or projects, I was always the only one, or many times the only one. So you have to be confident in yourself and what you know and what you can bring to the organization and to your company or your school or wherever, to the project, so that you don't feel singled out or weird because you're like the only one. Many times they said you're like a silver unicorn. You're a woman, Latina, an engineer, first generation engineer in my family, and that never made me feel that I couldn't do it. It was just geography. It was just a number. It was just demographics. I felt, you know what? If I'm the first one, I'm not going to be the last. So let's do it. So that's the attitude I've had throughout my life. It doesn't matter if I'm the first one or if I'm the only one. I'm going to do it, and I will trace that path for other people that want to do more amazing things or that want to do this that I'm doing right now. Fortunately for me, as I mentioned at UPRM, there were a lot of women in the civil engineering school where I was. So I never felt that we had a situation. When I went out into the workforce, that's when I learned that women in STEM fields were not 50%. And we have a lot of way to go. But there are many support and references in organizations that can help us, as women, get into STEM as early on as in elementary school. And that's something I also do for schools, talk to students, young students, about engineering so that they get excited about the profession. And so this is me. That's my husband. That's my daughter, Anna. Anna's 10 years old. I got my bachelor's in civil engineering from the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. I got my master's degree in Mississippi State University. And I'll go through the experiences I've had as an engineer and also what I do with professional organizations. So my first internship in college was with Walt Disney World with the college program. And I worked in the cast and entertainment department. So I was Mickey Mouse. I say it very proudly. I was Mickey, I was Minnie, I was the little ones, all the short ones, because I'm only 5 feet tall. So someday my daughter will know. She still believes, so I won't tell her yet. But that was a great opportunity for me to be more independent. I left Puerto Rico for that summer, went to live in Florida and Orlando. And when I was there as a civil engineer, I wanted to see what an engineer did at Disney. So I spoke with my supervisor and I asked them, can I meet an engineer at Disney? I want to shadow this person. And they connected me with the chief of structural and design at Disney. That was amazing. So I shadowed this person for a day. We kept in touch later on in my college years. And it was great to see what an engineer does at Disney. They're Imagineers. So after that internship, and that internship actually helped me to get the other internship I got in college, which was at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. I had been in space camp when I was young in 9th grade. And NASA was always my dream. I want to be an astronaut. I want to go to NASA. So I actually did a 2-year co-op, a research program, and then a co-op at NASA in Marshall. It was a great opportunity. It was an amazing experience. I met astronauts. I did amazing projects. I worked in the Flight Projects Directorate with advanced projects. And that also was an amazing experience for me in my resume when I actually went into the real world as an engineer. So I'm very grateful that I was able to do these internships. And I always encourage students to do internships because that's the best way of you knowing if what you're studying or what you're going to be doing as an engineer or as in any other profession is what you really enjoy. So I always promote internships, and I give a lot of presentations on how to prepare and succeed in internships, because for me, they were fundamental early on in my career. So my first job as an engineer was with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I left NASA. I graduated. I finished my co-op experience at NASA, and I started working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The experiences I had as an intern student helped me get more seniority in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, because I had a year with the federal service. So all that work I had done as an intern provided even more opportunities for me when I started working with the Corps of Engineers. I was there for 3 years. I was in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And I have to say that moving from Puerto Rico to Vicksburg, Mississippi, there was a change in culture. There was a change in scenery, and my life changed. I was becoming an adult and on my own without my parents. It was an amazing place to work, very technical. I did research in the areas of airfield pavements. I traveled the world doing military research for the Army, for the Marines, for the U.S. Air Force, for the Navy. So it was a great opportunity for me to start my career, and it was very technical. So amazing foundation for what I'm doing now. But at the same time, it was a big adjustment, because I left Puerto Rico, I left my home, even though I had done internships. This was the real deal. I was going to be on my own and live in Vicksburg, Mississippi, that was completely different of Puerto Rico. So that change was something else I had to deal with. Other than becoming a professional, I was becoming my own independent person, away from my family, from my friends, from my language. So that was an adjustment period. And it was something that I also had to work on at the same time as learning how to be this great research engineer. So definitely opening up to learning how to be independent and integrating myself in the culture and learning in Mississippi and meeting other people was great for me to be able to develop myself and just get to know another place that wasn't home. And obviously I had to learn how to manage my own money too, because now it was me on my own. So this opportunity for me with the Army Corps of Engineers, I always say that it was the best start of my career. It was 3 years. After that, I went on to work somewhere else. Talk about this first. Before I go into where I went afterwards, since college, I was very involved in professional organizations. And that's how I met Dr. Mimi in the Society of Women Engineers. I was very involved in college in SWE and also the American Society of Civil Engineers. And when I graduated college, I continued on as a professional. So the great opportunity for us as being involved in these organizations is we meet people like Dr. Mimi and I became great friends at SWE, but also with so many other women engineers and scientists. And the network grows, and you have opportunities like this right now to speak with all of you, but also learn from other STEM fields and from amazing women that are doing amazing projects around the world. So I also always recommend to have an organization like SWE for professional development and leadership development, but also the American Society of Civil Engineers is a technical aspect of my profession. They're civil engineers, so with them, I've presented my research projects and my technical work around the world. So it's a great opportunity for us to also share our work and pretty much become an author, because I've done a lot of technical publications. So I always recommend getting involved in professional organizations from early on as a student and continuing on as a professional. There are others that I participate on. The other thing is that when you start participating in these organizations, your own peers recognize you for your work. So I do a lot of outreach with students and especially young children like my daughter. I go present, I tell them about engineering, I do Girl Scout events, I do Engineers Week, math counts, all these different things to help children become more interested in STEM fields. And I've gotten a lot of awards too, which is pretty awesome. I enjoy that too. I don't do this for the awards, but I have gotten a lot of awards with these organizations. And that's always really uplifting because you're doing a great work that's being recognized. And that's always very helpful and very motivational. So after I left the Corps of Engineers in 2006, I started working as an aviation analyst with Kimley Horn and Associates in West Palm Beach, Florida. So I went from Mississippi to Florida. I got married in 2005, and my husband and I are both from Puerto Rico. We met in college, and we decided we wanted to be closer to family. So we moved from Mississippi to Florida, and this is where compromise comes in. I love my job with the Corps of Engineers, but you also have to make decisions based on your personal life. So I decided my husband and I were going to move closer to family in Puerto Rico. We were going to live in Florida, and we got a job in this amazing company with Kimley Horn. Kimley Horn is a civil engineering firm. They do civil engineering type work all over the United States and Puerto Rico. And I was in the aviation practice. So I continued on with airports, but instead of working with military bases, I was now working with commercial and general aviation airports. So now I was working with civilian airports. And I worked on airports all over Florida. And then I started collaborating with the company to start an office or to open an office in Puerto Rico. So that was in 2010. So in 2014, I moved to Puerto Rico to open the Kimley Horn office, where I was the office manager, the office leader. I became a vice president with the firm, and I was the practice builder, which means that I had my own firm or my own company within the company. So I had my own clients and my own staff, everything focused on aviation and transportation. So it was a great opportunity for me as a leader and as a civil engineer to grow my practice. I worked on cell phone towers. I worked on structural engineering, on highways, on land development, all these different things that maybe I wasn't as exposed to early on in my career. But as an office practice leader for a civil engineering firm, I was a more well-rounded engineer. So I started doing many other things other than aviation. I had a few challenges coming back to Puerto Rico. I'm from Puerto Rico, but I had left the island in 2003. So when I moved to Puerto Rico, it was almost like I had to relearn Spanish because my Spanish was also, all the technical terms that I had learned were in English in school and in working in Mississippi and in Florida. So when I moved back to Puerto Rico, I had to relearn Spanish, the technical side. So it was almost like it was a new lingo. So that was one of the challenges, which I didn't think I was going to go through that. The other thing is I look very young. So a lot of times it was, who is this girl? They couldn't believe I was the office manager, or that I was the project manager, or that I was the engineer that they were going to be answering to. So I had to also go into the job or go into the client's office and into the projects with an open mind and just be like, okay, I do look young, I sound young, but I have all this knowledge and all this experience to contribute to the organization and to the projects. So I never felt offended when they kind of looked at me like, oh, we're not sure about her. I knew I had to show them what I could do, but I wasn't going to be fighting about it. I was just going to be, you know what, my job will speak for me. So definitely it was a little bit of a challenge at the beginning to be respected among my peers in Puerto Rico. I had left in 2003 and came back to the island as a professional. So there was a little bit of apprehension, as in, you're coming back to the island. We're sure that if things don't go well, you're going to go back to the United States. So they felt like I wasn't committed to being in Puerto Rico and that I would leave if things would get tough. So I also had to earn a lot of respect within the engineering community and in the island. Also, for many of you that don't know, Puerto Rico has gone through many issues with political turmoil and economy. So developing a new office and growing a business in Puerto Rico was not very easy. So I had to learn how to do that as well. And thankfully, through a lot of hard work and persistence and a lot of good planning and a lot of marketing and a lot of business development, I was able to develop this amazing office in Guaynabo, Puerto Rico. And that's what I did from March of 2014 until December of last year. But And Mary, if you want to tell me if there are any questions right now, we can stop before I start talking about Hurricane Maria.
I am not seeing any hands raised, and I'm not seeing anything in the what made you want to get in?
There are a few questions in the chat.
Yeah.
What was the question?
I can read you the question, starting from Ashley. How long did you study engineering?
So I studied engineering for 5 years. So it's a 5-year program in Puerto Rico. It's 180 credit hours. So it's almost like a bachelor's and a master's together. So I studied 5 years in the bachelor's and then a year and a half in a master's. It took me a little bit longer because I worked at the same time as I took as I finished my master's degree. But I got paid to do my graduate studies by the Army Corps of Engineers. So that was a good part. It took me longer to finish the master's, but my employer paid for it. So that's something you have to consider when you go study engineering and you want to do graduate studies. Do you want to go straight to graduate school, or do you do it while you work? It takes you longer and it's a little bit more of a balance because you have your job and then you have to get home to study. So it does require a lot of balancing between work and life and studying and all that. But I did it that way. I did it going through graduate school while I worked, and I didn't have to pay for it myself. They paid for it. So that's how I did it.
Okay, and then Angelina asks, did you like the fact that your job required you to travel a lot?
Yes, absolutely. Kind of why I became an aviation engineer. I'm a civil engineer with concentration in aviation, and I wanted to travel the world. I've gone to pretty much everywhere in the United States and the Caribbean, but also to Seoul, Korea. That was an international conference that I was a speaker at in 2005, where I presented my research with the Corps of Engineers, and I love to travel. So for me, engineering also provided that opportunity to travel the world. So yes, I love that. However, now that I'm a mother, I don't travel as much. So we have to make decisions throughout our career of when we're going to prioritize work 100%, or not 100%, but a lot of our time we can travel, and when we can go and our family stays behind. Like my husband would stay home and I would go travel. And we were okay with it because it was just the two of us. Once I had my daughter in 2010, I stopped traveling as much. I still traveled at least once a month, but it wasn't every week. So I prioritized a lot early on in my career to finish my graduate studies, to get my engineering license, my professional engineering license, and to travel as much as I could. That I did in the first 10 years of my career because I wanted to and I could. Now I travel a little bit less because I want to be here for my daughter. So that's how I've balanced everything, is prioritizing different things throughout my career. We can do it all. I always say we can do it all. We just can't do it all at the same time because we need time to breathe. We need time to work. We need time for family. We need time for ourselves. We need time to be healthy, to exercise, to eat well, to sleep. So we have to make sure that we balance everything out. And sometimes we juggle. We really don't balance. We juggle. Some things are going to be more important than others at a certain time, and then they'll switch. So we just have to find that happy medium place or what works for us. And this is how I've made it work.
Okay, and then we have a few similar questions. Isabella asked, did you ever get turned down for a job because you're a Latina or a woman? And then we have Delilah asking, did people try to discourage you because you're a woman when you're working up to be an engineer?
Okay, so I have never been turned down a job or an opportunity because I'm a Latina or a woman, anything like that. I haven't. However, I know that's not the norm, and I know that might not be the case for some of my peers, but I've never had that experience. I've also, like I said initially, I've never seen my ethnicity, my race as an impediment or as an obstacle. I gotta say this, it's a superpower. We can speak more than one language. We've got a different culture. We got a different perspective. And for myself, I see diversity as a requirement for making an organization work better. I see teamwork as essential to make everything work. And I'm very open to diversity and to inclusiveness and just to be able to have different perspectives because that's how I grew up, and that's how I grew up in Puerto Rico. So I never saw it as an obstacle, as an impediment, as any issue whatsoever. So I think that mindset and that attitude also helped me when maybe something wouldn't have gone the way that it should have. I just never had that feeling that it was going to stop me. So it wasn't in my mind, even in my mind, that I was going to find discrimination or an obstacle because of what I was. I was born a woman. I was born in Puerto Rico. That was part of who I was. So whatever I was bringing to an organization, to the university, or to wherever I went in the world, that was part of my identity. So I never felt that it was going to be a problem. The other question was regarding, what was the second one?
Did you ever feel this, or did people try to discourage you because you're a woman?
Right. So not necessarily, but there were a lot of doubts on what I wanted to achieve. And I come from a small town in Puerto Rico, from humble family, and I'm the first engineer in the family as well. My parents, my mom is a teacher, my dad is a sales representative, and we didn't have a lot of money, but we never had a problem on education and encouragement. My mom always encouraged me to go big, to think big, that I could do anything I wanted. Obviously, we had some limited resources financially, but I worked, I did programs, I sold cakes and chocolates, whatever I had to do, and worked as a young person to be able to travel, to be able to afford a trip. There were always student aid programs, and I went into those so that I could travel to go to space camp. I went to Close Up in Washington, D.C., and I paid for those working as a student in student aid programs. So I always thought, if I work really hard, I'm going to get this. Obviously, that's not that simple. But there were never really people that told me, you can't do this, because I wouldn't listen. I was like, I'm going to do this. I had parents that always encouraged me. There were some doubts on if I was going to be able to do it or not. But I think that has happened throughout my career as well. When I moved to Florida, I told my boss, my new boss, that I wanted to work in Puerto Rico. And he said, find me a project in Puerto Rico or a client, and we will go there. And some of my coworkers were, you're never going to get to Puerto Rico. We don't do business there. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll find it. So it's us having, again, that mentality of, I can do this, and why not? It hasn't been done. Well, why not? And so you can't just stop where people don't believe you can do something. I think I've seen this before in different quotes. Don't let people's limitations ruin your own aspirations, because they might think you can't do anything because they themselves can't do it, or they don't think it's possible. That doesn't have to apply to you. So I always thought, you know what, I can do this. If I work really hard and I prepare myself, I can do this. So for me, education, preparation has been key. I knew it was going to be hard. I knew I was going to have to study a lot, and I knew I needed financial aid, and I knew that I didn't have a lot of people that I knew outside of my family that were engineers or that could connect me, or political connections, nothing like that. So I knew that a lot of the work to get to where I wanted, it was going to have to be me and not rely on other people for my success. So you can't wait for others to tell you, go apply for the NASA internship, go apply for the Disney internship, go study for this test. You have to do good in school. I knew I had to do that. So I did it. And I have great parents that inspired me and always pushed me, but I also push myself a lot. And you have to have clear goals. And what do you want to do? How do you get there? Find friends or teachers that will help you and encourage you. And if you have that experience that somebody is telling you you can't do something, be realistic, but also see, why not? What do I have to do to get there? What are my options? What are the resources that I need? All of you participating right now, it's amazing, because this helps you get to where you want to go. This shows you that, yes, there might be some limitations, but it doesn't mean they'll be there forever. It doesn't mean you can't get past them and get to where you want to be. So it's all about your attitude and what you're willing to, are you willing to work hard and to achieve those goals? Anything else?
Okay, I know we have a few more questions, but for the sake of time, I think we should move on with the presentation.
Okay, I'll go quickly and then we can do more talking, or more questions. Okay, so in 2017, there is Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. I know Tara mentioned it at the beginning. It was in September 2017, so almost 4 years ago. Back then, and this is a picture of the hurricane, I was in Puerto Rico, I was managing the projects in Puerto Rico at the airports, and Hurricane Maria happened. Right after the hurricane, there was total destruction in Puerto Rico. We didn't know where to start. As an engineer, we are trained to solve problems. So I went out of my house, my whole street was flooded. We couldn't really go out. There was no electricity, there was no power, there's no resources, there was no communication, no internet, no phones, there was nothing. It was almost like somebody turned off the switch, shook the island and threw it back, and that's how we woke up and found it. So it was pretty scary. It took us a long time, and it still is taking us time to recover. So as an engineer, my company, we started working with our clients, helping them restore and reconstruct anything that everything and anything. The airports were destroyed. The radars for communication with the airplanes were destroyed. The weather stations were destroyed. Puerto Rico was without communication with the world, and it was very scary times. So my husband and I are both engineers. He works for the Army, and I worked with a private firm back then, and we started helping. We started doing voluntary work. Every time we would go to a community, I would help students, kids, learn about engineering, and would do gun drop domes and towers and different things just to teach him and keep him involved, while the parents did other things with doctors or social workers, or we had stations where we would donate food and they could pick up clothes and research and anything they needed, because that you see there in the picture in the middle, it was aid that we got from Florida to help in Puerto Rico, so we could have batteries and lanterns and mosquito sprays and food and water. All that stuff was very difficult to find in Puerto Rico at that time. So it was starting all over. We're still recovering. It's going to take us about 10 years to recover from Hurricane Maria. Right now, that's part of my job, of what I'm doing, also helping the island recover. But it was very difficult, but also, again, you have this difficult situation, and you can't stay home thinking, I can't do anything. I mean, there's no power, there's no food, there's no cell phone, there's no internet. Well, we went out and we started working. My daughter is the one on the right, on the bottom right, and she would go to work with us because we didn't have communication with grandma or grandpa, and some of the roads you couldn't even drive through. So I would take her with me in some of the assessments and projects that I would do, or my husband would take her with him. This is her in her U.S. Army Corps of Engineers hard hat. We had to replan and we had to do what we had to do to get through it, and also attend to our daughter because she was there with us. We couldn't just leave her home. So it was definitely trying times. And then COVID-19 happened. So after we recovered, the company got back in, we had all these different projects. Then COVID happened, the world shut down here in Puerto Rico on March 15th of 2020. And we had so many projects we had to get done, but we had to do it all remote. So my group of 8 people in Puerto Rico became 55 people from all the United States, from California to Florida, with different time zones. So we had to get the projects done. I do design work for runways and taxiways and airports. So we had to do everything remote. So everybody working at different times. We would have client meetings. We would have design workshops, all online because nobody could leave their homes. And I was working with 24-hour schedules. So I would sleep very little on rotation because I was the project manager of all these projects and the office manager. So I had to manage all the projects with all different people from around the United States. It was challenging. We got it done. We were able to finish the projects, and now they're under construction. But again, it's working with the team and being able to plan and execute on emergencies. And you only learn that with time, and sometimes during crisis is when you actually know what you're made of and how you have to react. And you know what? Sometimes unless crisis comes, that you don't know how you're going to react until that happens. So we just had to meet our deadlines and get all the projects done, and that's how we did it. But it was definitely a different perspective, and we had to be very creative with our projects. These are just a few things. I think that in times of crisis, the most important thing is teamwork and also communications. So you have to have a good team. You have to be able to communicate. There are a lot of things that will go right, some will not. So you have to make sure that there's a lot of quality control, that you're looking through things, that you're reviewing them, that everybody has their task very clear, that you do team recognition. If somebody's staying up until midnight to help you, recognize them. You got to be creative. We had to use a lot of visual tours. So if we were going to do a project and we had to do a tour, but nobody could go out of their houses, we had somebody filming where the project was going to be, and then we prepared videos so that we can actually show them what the project was all about. So it was all doing the best we could with what we had. So definitely in times of crisis, your team is your best ally. So after that, the unexpected pre-Thanksgiving call. And this is what I'm doing now. I gotta tell you, life changed on December 7th of 2020. So before Thanksgiving, I got a call from a friend, and she asked me if I could send her my resume because she wanted to submit my name for a position. And I was like, nope, you're crazy. I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm managing my own firm. I have my staff that I love. My teammates are my family. I have clients that I love. We've got so much work. I'm good. I'm getting paid really well because, again, engineering pays very well too. I was happy, but I couldn't ignore the call. So in December 7th of 2020, I became the secretary of the Puerto Rico Department of Transportation and Public Works. So now I am Madam Secretary. I am Honorable Secretary Velez Vega. And now I am part of the Puerto Rico government. The governor interviewed me in December, and he said, I want you to be my Secretary of Transportation and Public Works. And I was like, okay. I've never been involved in politics. As you saw in my trajectory, I've been very involved in research and design and construction, managing a company, developing a business, and talking to students and being a SWE member and just being Aileen the engineer, but managing a business as well and doing marketing and business development. And when I met the governor in December, I had an interview with him and he offered me the job. It was a decision that I have to make with my family, with my husband. We talked about it. This is a very public position. I am managing the transportation and public works for the whole island. And there's also a lot of scrutiny because it is a political appointee position. And because I wasn't in politics, people in politics didn't know me. So I had to also go into a new world, into a new area that I wasn't exposed to before. So it has been a learning curve of me becoming the Secretary of Transportation and Public Works. And I love it. It's amazing. It's a lot of work. It's very challenging. Puerto Rico's transportation has a lot of challenges, and it has since Hurricane Maria and before. So I'll give you a quick run through of what I'm responsible for now. But I have to say, even with the challenges and being such a high profile position, I'm honored that I was recommended and that I actually was selected to be the secretary and that the governor trusted me to do this and to be part of his cabinet. But it's definitely a new life. Life changed drastically. My daughter says, "Mommy, you're famous," and there's a lot of press and a lot of things that are written about me too. You see some of those here, some of the clippings from the news and from the newspaper and all the articles. Yesterday, I couldn't be here with all of you because I had a press conference that was canceled at the last minute. So I told Dr. Mimi, I was like, you can imagine, I had to change and then it got canceled. It'll be next week. But things happen. It's very, very dynamic. It changes all the time and things happen every day. So DTOP, which is called Department of Transportation and Public Works in Spanish, it has about 4,000 employees. I am responsible for maintenance and operations of the island's state roads. We've got the Department of Motor Vehicles, all the different driver's licenses for Puerto Ricans right now. If they renew their license, my signature goes on their license. So I've had a lot of my family members that have renewed their license in these last 5 months send me pictures and say, look at this, how neat, you're signing my license. So So it's definitely different than when I signed and sealed plans. Now I'm the secretary. So part of what I do is also maintaining and operating the roads, the state roads. This is just a map of all the roads in Puerto Rico. Per capita or per island, per territory, we do have more miles of roads than many areas in the world. Puerto Rico is small; it's 100 by 35 miles, but as you can see, it's very dense, and it has a very thorough, very dense roadway system. And we are responsible for 95.1% of all the state roads in the island, and pretty much 100% with all the other components. But Department of Transportation and Public Works is responsible for 95.1% of those roads. Puerto Rico also has 2 municipal islands off of the East Coast, and those are also municipalities that I am responsible for. We've got the Highway and Transportation Authority, which has about 135 employees with a budget of about $162 million per year. And they are involved in rehabilitating and constructing major state highway systems. So they do receive a lot of federal funds for all this. It's one of our operational components. We've got the Maritime Transportation Authority. So we've got ferry boats that take people from the metro area and also from the East Coast to the 2 municipal islands. We've got the Metropolitan Bus Authority. So we've got buses that run through the metro area providing service. We've got the train, which is called Tren Urbano. That's me on the bottom left with the governor at one of our events in the train. And we also have the Ports Authority, which is an affiliate, and that's what I used to work with. More of my time was based on airports. There's 10 airports in Puerto Rico, 9 regional and 1 medium hub, which is San Juan Airport, which if you came to Puerto Rico, that's probably where you flew into. We also have several ports around the island. And then we also have traffic safety, which is involved in preventing car crashes and people driving drunk or people driving under the influence of other substances. We do a lot of education so that people drive responsibly. So I am now in charge of all this for the entire island of Puerto Rico. And as I said, I have about 4,000 employees under the umbrella of the Department of Transportation and Public Works, and a lot of contractors and consultants. So yeah, my reach and my responsibilities grew. And again, I'm honored. But I gotta say that all you girls out there, I never expected that I was going to be chosen to do this. But again, I prepared myself. I had always said that one day I wanted to be the secretary of the Department of Transportation in Puerto Rico. I said it to my mom, I said it to friends, but it was always a joke, but kind of a goal that I was like kind of joking around it, but I wanted to do it. And then when it happened, my friends always said, you said that years ago, even in college, and you did it and you came through. I mean, your dream or your little goal that was kind of a joke came through. So be careful what you wish for. I mean, you prepare yourself, you become this amazing engineer, or you're very focused on your goals and you have your network and you prepare yourself, amazing things happen. So I got to say, this is a lot of work, and it's hard. And many times it's frustrating and sad because we want to work through helping everybody and resolving all the issues, and it takes time. It's not overnight. And I was used to working very fast. As a consultant, time is money. So we do a project, we finish, we move on, or we will lose money, or our clients can lose money. So with the government, the pace is different, and there's a lot of processes that I'm learning and going through. So I've had to switch that mentality of working in private industry, but without losing the sense of urgency, because we still have an island and people's lives are in our hands. So definitely it's a little different from what I had done, but my life as a consultant and working with the federal government prepared me to be doing this right now. So before I finish, I mentioned in the beginning that things happen and we gotta be flexible, and sometimes things don't go as planned. When I was pregnant with my daughter in 2010, I was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin lymphoma. It's cancer. I was 29 years old. I was managing my own projects. I had my own staff. I was still in Florida, and I was pregnant. I was excited. It was our first baby. My husband and I were very excited. But at 5 months old, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I had chemotherapy, and I thought that I wasn't going to make it. I didn't think I was going to be able to be a mother. So life changed completely. I did stop work. I stopped working for about a year or 2 years. And my company allowed me to take the time to get better, to be able to take the treatment, to get chemo, to have my daughter, to focus on my health. And then I came back to work at Kimley Horn. So having that support system with my family and the company understanding that I was committed to my job, but I needed a break to be able to focus on my health so I could go back to work and restart life. It was a good thing to have that support from family and from my company. But what I wanted to show you all was sometimes life doesn't go the way we planned. And it doesn't matter how much we prepare. And as you can probably see, I prepare a lot. I'm very structured, very organized. But sometimes, but when this happens, you have to be flexible and you have to modify your plan. So this is my different plan. I didn't plan to be the secretary, but because I went through this experience 10 years ago, I thought, you know what? I already went through cancer. My daughter is 10, so she is healthy. I had my daughter after 3 chemotherapy treatments. She was born a little early, but she was born healthy and gorgeous, and that's her. She actually visited me when she was a baby to the hospital. When she was a year old, I had a reoccurrence. So I had cancer again in 2012, and I had a stem cell transplant. And here I am today. I've been on remission for about 9 years. I'm healthy. I'm an engineer again. I'm the Secretary of Transportation in Public Works of Puerto Rico. My daughter's 10 years old, and I'm really happy. And I'm glad that I went through everything I went through. Sometimes we don't understand why we got to go through hard stuff, but it makes us stronger. It makes us more there's more empathy in our lives. I have a lot of empathy now for many things, but also the sense of urgency is different. The perspective is different. Priorities are different. I see life differently. So if I'm stuck in traffic, I don't complain very much, even if I'm late, because I'm alive and I'm healthy. It could be worse. So I always now compare my life to what bad things happen to, you know what, worse things have happened and I'm here and I can get through this. So when they offered me the position to be secretary, I thought, this is going to be really hard. But I already went through really hard things and I got through it and I'm here. So you know what? I can be a voice to cancer patients, to cancer survivors, to Latinas, to so many people. So I'm going to do this. And here I am. I'm doing your presentation right now. I'm presenting to all of you, contributing to the island. I have my 10-year-old daughter. My husband and I are really happy that the cancer is gone and that I can focus on my life. But not because bad things happen to us, it means that it's the end. It means that life can change and still be amazing and we can still thrive. So what works for me is I told you about strong communication skills. You got to do your homework, become an expert in your field. You got to build on your credibility. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. Control your emotions. I say I don't cry at work. I go to the bathroom if I have to, and then I cry there, but nobody's going to see me crying. A good attitude and enthusiasm rolls into your team. It's contagious. Self-initiative. I never wait until somebody tells me what to do. I will do it myself. I'm not going to wait for someone to tell me I have to go do something, because our success is in our hands. You can get support, but you don't wait for anybody to tell you what to do or to do things for you. You have to do it yourself. You build strong relationships with your friends, with your teachers, when you're in college, with your professors, when you go in an internship with your coworkers. You never know when you're going to need a relationship or a connection to help you or to just for education purposes. So I'm always very good about following up, keeping in touch, sending an email or saying thank you. Those things will take you a long way. And also, always your health and your family are always top priority. Even if we're really busy at school or if we're really busy at work when you become a professional, remember that you have to take care of yourself. You have to have a hobby, and health is the most important thing, because if we're not healthy, we can't do anything. We can't conquer the world if we're not healthy. So This is just to end a picture of me and my daughter in 2011. She was 3 weeks old. I was still going through the treatment. And this picture is from 2019. She's 9 there. We recreated the photo because it was such a special moment. So, you know what? Life is good. It's sometimes very hard, but we can get through it. And I want to be an example of that for all of you and for people that need that. So that's it. This is my email. If you all want to send me an email, send me questions. I always like to help students and to help you all thrive. So thank you. Mary, I'm good. I'm done.
Go ahead. No, you're not done.
Yes.
No, you're not done yet. So I'm going to ask a special request. Would you please give a couple words of advice to some of the young ladies on Espanol?
En español, claro. Okay, wait, let me stop sharing. How do I stop sharing? Pause share. There you go. En español. Bueno, chicas, buenas tardes. Espero que les haya gustado mi presentación. No se rindan nunca, ¿ok? La vida a veces es difícil, nos pasan muchas cosas, pero tenemos que tener educación, tenemos que prepararnos y nunca pensar que no podemos. Si alguien nos dice que no se puede, eso es problema de ellos. Nosotras podemos hacer todo lo que nos propongamos y todo lo que trabajemos fuerte para conseguir, ¿ok? Así que oren mucho también. I pray a lot. Oren también, tengan su grupo de apoyo con su mamá, su papá, su familia, sus maestros. Busquen mentores. Find a mentor. Mentores que les puedan ayudar, ¿ok? A veces no podemos hacer todo solas, podemos buscar ayuda. Así que aquí estoy yo para que si necesitan una mentora, también estoy y Dios me las bendiga y mucho éxito y gracias por estar aquí conmigo hoy. Mary, did you get all that?
Gracias.
Gracias.
Okay, taking over, Alexis and Tara.
Okay,
I see a lot
so
of
we
thank
do
yous.
have
I see a lot of
5 minutes for questions.
Gracias. I love it. I see a lot of thank yous and gracias.
Okay, so we're gonna go with Josie real quickly. Josie, go ahead.
So I have been wanting to be an engineer since I joined admin last year, and they made me research colleges what I want to be, and I found I wanted to be an engineer. But one is a very down-bringing things that I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to afford to go to university and stuff like that. And
I couldn't hear Josie very much.
I think she's talking about being able to afford to go to university, and truly she'd like to be an engineer.
Okay, so I had a scholarship to go to college as a bachelor's. I got an award for academic excellence, and I got money to go to college. Also, in my school, there was a program that if you had good grades, meaning 3.50 or over in my university, then we didn't have to pay for tuition. So I kept my grades up all the time. I had that initial scholarship, which was $5,000, but in Puerto Rico, college is not as expensive as in the United States. So that did help me. So I did get a scholarship. I had the Pell Grant as well, which was federal aid for students. I applied for that too. And then I also did really good grades so that I wouldn't have to pay tuition. So again, it was 5 years. So throughout the 5 years, I had the Pell Grant. I also had student loans. I had to take on some student loans, which if you don't need them, don't do it. But if you need to, those are available as well. So that's how I did it. I combined federal aid with an academic excellence scholarship with a waiver of tuition, and then I had also student loans.
All right, next we have Angelina. Go ahead.
Was it hard for you during your process of like cancer and all of that? I'm asking because, you know, I have a family member that's recently going through that, and I want to like be able to give words of inspiration.
Sure. Well, it was very hard. It was hard. I had to stop working, as I mentioned. So that was also hard because I had to give up my projects. I had to give my projects and my clients to another engineer. So when I came back to work about 2 years later, my projects were either done or finished, and I had to regain all that back, or just get all my clients back. Some of them I never got back. So I had to reinvent myself and start all over again. And it was hard, but again, I mean, I had a calendar, and this also, again, very like life is to me like a project. So I had a calendar, and I knew I had 12 sessions of chemotherapy. So every time I would go to a session, I had my calendar and I would X out one less chemo that I have to go through. I have how many I had left? 10, 9, 8, whatever. So that to me helped me on the goal that this is going to be done soon, that as soon as I finish these 12 chemotherapies, I'm going to be done and I'm going to go back to life. It wasn't that simple, but that's how I would view it because it was important to me to see the end to it. I had Hodgkin lymphoma, so it was a curable cancer. It's not that any cancer is good, and it did come back, but my focus was, this is going to be done. I'm going to get through this, and this is my end goal. I need to go through these 12 treatments, and I'm going to be done. So obviously, I went to support groups. I started going to support groups with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and that helped a lot because it helped me see other patients and survivors that had gone through the same thing I was going through, and they were alive. Most of them were retired. I was like the youngest person in that group. So I thought, you know, they're retired, they went through this and they're done and they're back to their lives. So it helped me focus on, I can do this and I can get through it and I can go back to living a healthy life. The other thing I did was I became a mentor, and also I became a volunteer with the organization. So I even did, I was at one point, I was the president of the board of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society in Puerto Rico, and I've done walks and I did half marathons. So I got really involved in helping patients and survivors. So that's how I felt I was giving back to them what life had given me. And I had amazing doctors and a family support group and friends as well in my company. So I felt that I got through it with a lot of help. So now I have to help other patients. I'm still doing that right now. I do a program called First Connection, and I help patients go through their treatments, and they call me for questions every time they have maybe something they don't want to ask their doctor. They call me and they ask me, and I talk to them through what I went through. So it's important for me now to give back and provide that mentorship and that help and support to other patients. Anything else?
Okay, thank you. So we do have to go into breakout rooms.
The chat is really good.
Yeah,
It's
very active.
This is great.
We do have to go into breakout rooms now, but if you still have questions, Eileen will be going around the breakout rooms. So if you see her, you can ask her in there.